She never expected her small act of kindness to change the course of so many lives. A waitress, barely surviving on her own, spent 10 long years secretly feeding 4 orphaned girls who had nowhere else to turn. Her sacrifice went unnoticed, her struggle invisible to a world that never seemed to care. But 12 years later, when a black SUV pulled up outside her door, everything she thought she knew about her past and her future was about to unravel. Who was inside, and why had they come after all these years? Maria had spent most of her life in the shadows, working long hours as a waitress in a small diner where tips barely covered her rent. To most, she was invisible, just another tired face serving plates no one remembered. But behind closed doors, her life was far from ordinary. Years earlier, she stumbled upon 4 young girls, abandoned and hungry, with no one to turn to. She couldn't walk away. For 10 years, Maria sacrificed meals, sleep, and even her own dreams to keep them alive. Yet despite all she gave, the world around her never seemed to care. And as the years passed, whispers of doubt and judgment followed her, hinting that her sacrifices might one day come at a devastating cost. For years, Maria's life was a cycle of exhaustion. She would wake before dawn, tie her hair back, and step into the diner where the scent of burnt coffee and fried eggs clung to her uniform long after her shift ended. Customers rarely looked her in the eye, except when frustration over a late order spilled into harsh words. To them, she was just the help, a woman with dark skin and a heavy accent, someone easy to dismiss. But the girls at home knew the truth. They saw the blisters on her hands, the nights she went without dinner, the quiet tears she wiped away when she thought no one was watching. At first, feeding 4 orphans had seemed impossible. Every paycheck was stretched thinner than paper. Every tip counted 3 times before it left her pocket. Neighbors whispered behind her back. Some muttered that she was foolish for taking in someone else's problem. Others sneered openly, suggesting that people like her should focus on their own kind instead of playing savior. The girls, however, never doubted her love, and that love became her shield against the cruelty of a world determined to remind her she didn't belong. But racism has a way of leaving scars deeper than hunger. Maria felt it daily at the grocery store, where clerks followed her as if expecting theft. At the school, where teachers assumed the girls she cared for would fail simply because of where they came from. Even at church, where whispers of charity cases carried farther than the hymns. Still, Maria pressed on. She told herself the world could take everything from her, but it could not take her will to protect the girls. The years rolled forward, each one heavier than the last. As the girls grew, so did the weight of prejudice. They were mocked for their clothes, bullied for their skin, and reminded constantly that they were different. Maria fought for them at every turn, writing letters, attending meetings, standing in spaces where she was neither welcomed nor respected. Each battle left her weary, but she carried on, fueled by the belief that one day the world would see these girls for who they truly were. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late, the diner nearly empty, when a group of businessmen sat at her table. Their laughter was sharp, their words cutting. They spoke about her as though she wasn't there, mocking her accent, joking about how someone like her could never amount to anything more than clearing dishes. Maria's hands shook as she poured their coffee, every cruel word pressing on wounds she had carried for years. She wanted to fight back, to speak, but she swallowed her pride, knowing the cost of defiance could mean losing her job. She went home that night with her spirit heavier than her body. As she unlocked the door, the girls rushed to greet her, their faces glowing with the innocence of children who didn't yet understand the weight she carried. For them, she forced a smile, hiding the storm inside. But deep down, Maria knew something was shifting. The sacrifices were piling up, the prejudice unrelenting. And sooner or later, something or someone would force the truth into the open. 12 years had passed since she first took the girls in. By then, the world had written its verdict on Maria's life. Invisible, expendable, unworthy of respect. Yet, destiny was moving closer, rolling on silent wheels toward her doorstep. And when the black SUV finally stopped outside her home, the life she had fought to protect was about to collide with a truth she never expected. The sound of tires crunching against gravel echoed through the quiet street. Maria froze at the window, her heart pounding as the black SUV idled outside her small, weathered home. The girls, now young women, looked at her with wide eyes, fear flickering in their faces. For years, Maria had lived with the unspoken fear that her past choices, her defiance against the odds, would one day catch up to her. And now it felt like that moment had arrived. The door to the SUV opened, and a man stepped out in a sharp suit, his presence heavy with authority. Neighbors peeked from their windows, whispering. Maria's skin prickled, not because she had done wrong, but because she knew too well what judgment looked like when directed at someone like her. In a world quick to condemn women of her color, of her class, the truth didn't always matter. Every step the man took toward her door tightened the knot in her chest. Memories surged. Every insult, every sneer, every time she had been reminded she didn't belong. Was this justice arriving to strip away the life she had fought to build? Was it punishment for daring to love children the world had abandoned? When the knock finally came, it sounded like thunder. The girls huddled close, bracing for a storm none of them understood. Maria's hand trembled on the doorknob. She had faced hunger, humiliation, and cruelty, but this felt different. This felt final. She opened the door, her breath catching in her throat. The man's eyes locked with hers, unreadable. And in that silence, Maria realized her life was about to change forever. What he said next would not only decide her fate, but reveal a truth that would shatter everything she thought she knew. The man at her door wasn't there to take the girls away. He wasn't there to accuse Maria of wrongdoing. Instead, he carried words that struck harder than any insult she had ever endured. The orphans she had raised, the children society had once ignored, mocked, and written off, were no longer invisible. They had grown, succeeded, and found their voices. And now, the very world that had tried to silence them was forced to acknowledge what Maria's love had made possible. But Maria's victory was bittersweet. For every child who thrived under her care, she knew countless others had been lost to the weight of poverty and prejudice. She had shielded her girls, but she could not shield them forever from the stares, the suspicion, the barriers built simply because of who they were. That black SUV was not just a symbol of recognition. It was a reminder of how much struggle had been endured before anyone bothered to notice. Her story is not just about kindness. It is about resilience in the face of systemic injustice, about choosing love when the world offers only cruelty. And yet, Maria's journey raises a question we cannot ignore. Why should a woman have to sacrifice everything, silently and unseen, just to prove her worth? This isn't just her story. It's the story of millions who are still fighting to be seen, respected, and treated as human. So ask yourself, how many more Marias must give everything before society finally opens its eyes? And when will we stop letting injustice dictate who is valued and who is forgotten?